All right, guys, we are back again. Dynamic Man Podcast, episode 17. Episode 17. And this is going to be a little bit of a shorter show than usual. Hard stop in 35 minutes. So we are only talking about one topic today, but we got a jam-packed topic today. We are going to be talking about the truth about porn. The truth about porn. Now, look. This porn debate, it's been going all over the internet right now. It's not the first time, obviously, that porn has been something that has been talked about in the manosphere. It's a perennial topic. And I want to, before we get into the nitty gritty here, I want to be really clear that I don't think porn is a good thing. I don't think porn's a good thing. There's no argument you can make to me that porn is a positive for men, that it is helpful for men, that it's entirely harmless for at least all men. However, where does it rank in the scale of issues that a man has? And where does it rank in the scale of issues? And is the moral hysteria around porn really warranted? Is the tweet that went viral the other day for its commentary on porn. And it's very frustrating for me to some extent as somebody who has never been saying porn use is good, has always been opposed to porn usage in guys, but to find myself kind of inadvertently on the side of porn usage just simply because of how extreme these kind of responses get. So look, let's see this. So the feminist turned housewife. If only she had more sex with him, he wouldn't need porn. This is one of the most manipulative, false, and degrading lies pushed onto women, and it needs to die. Porn addiction is not about lack of sex. It's about lust, disordered desire, and self-centeredness. Telling a wife that more sex will fix his porn habit is like telling her to feed her husband more steak so he'll stop sneaking fast food garbage. The issue isn't hunger. It's appetite, twisted, impulsive, addictive appetite. We don't tell the wife of an alcoholic, maybe if you poured his drinks for him, he wouldn't go to the bar. We recognize that enabling addiction doesn't cure it, it makes it worse. So why would we tell wives to enable their husband's lust and call it a solution? Research consistently shows that many men addicted to porn still have regular sex with their wives, sometimes even frequent, but it doesn't stop them. Why? Because porn isn't about intimacy, it's about control and fantasy. Telling a woman to just give him more is blaming her for his sin. It excuses selfishness and reduces marriage to a service contract, not a covenant of mutual love and faithfulness. Porn is a moral and spiritual issue. It requires repentance and accountability. So Matt Forney, who if you guys been around the manosphere a long time, Matt Forney was a big guy, maybe in a couple of senses of that word, for a long time. I had his own blog, and he had a pretty savage response to this. I'm gonna tackle both of their responses at once. Hot take: porn addiction isn't real. It's made up moral hysteria pushed by ugly, hormonally imbalanced women. Same as the non-existent alcoholism epidemic that led to prohibition. The only people who still watch porn as we traditionally define it are boomers sneaking off for a late night jerk. Most of the money has gone to OnlyFans, which functions as a girlfriend simulator as much as it does a means of getting off. Men subscribe to OnlyFans thoughts in large part due to their messaging service, in which thoughts pretend to give a shit about their clients' lives and make them feel like someone cares about them. The erotic content is secondary. The emotional connection is what they crave. In many ways, this isn't new. High-end escorts traditionally advertise themselves as companions able to converse about many subjects. OnlyFans just democratized it and turned it into a billion-dollar industry. How much of a carping, negative, unbearable bitch are you that your husband would rather have a parasocial relationship with a hooker? Said hooker is employed by an agency, basically a glorified pimp. and her messages are written by some Filipino making $3 an hour. And these guys would rather delude themselves into thinking a paid-to-play relationship is real than deal with you. Also, even before tube sites were invented, porn was cheap. Agencies are burning guys to the tune of 5 figures or more. There are thousands of Andrew Tates running around. They just aren't stupid enough to brag about it publicly. Just wait until AI advances to the point where LLMs can simulate human interaction down to 95% accuracy. The guy developing Orifice is going to be rich enough to buy his own outer heaven mercenary army. You're only obsessed with porn addiction because you don't like giving blowjobs. The problem isn't porn. It's the fact that you're a bitch. Try be nice to your husband so he doesn't spend the kids' college funds just so he can vomit his problems to Svetlana. Okay. So this is great. That was great. To be honest, I don't think the feminist turned housewife is entirely wrong about everything here. I do think that porn addiction is about lust, disordered desire, and to some extent self-centeredness. And it's also totally accurate that a lot of guys with porn addictions, or would say porn usage, can look at porn and have sex, and that there's not an exact connection between the two of them. In fact, sometimes having sex can trigger more porn usage. So it is totally accurate to say that, and maybe some guys will not like to hear this, but I've worked with plenty of guys, right? That porn and actual sexuality and like your actual sex drive, that, you know, that they are not exactly the same thing. Porn is typically used for guys not as so much a source of intimacy, because it's not a source of intimacy. It's used as an anxiety release valve. Now, that doesn't mean I disagree with what Matt's saying, because Matt Forney there's a lot of relevant stuff here about how guys are going to OnlyFans in large amounts because of the connection that they feel like these girls have for them, and that these girls, you know, advertise themselves as companions, and that they care about what's going on with these guys' lives. How much of a carpe negative, unbearable bitch are you that your husband would rather have a parasocial relationship with a hooker? I mean, this is powerful words, and there's a lot to this as well. So let's try to thread the needle here on the topic, because the bottom line is that porn and sex are different. So guys are typically not going to porn because they need to have sex. I'm not saying that it never happens, and there's definitely a case that as days go on for a guy, that he may use porn just to get off. You see, there's a lot of complicating factors here, because you have with porn also the angle that some guys who have a really high sex drive, and they might use porn to some extent as a way to get rid of some of that sex drive without it affecting the relationship. But it still bears to be said that guys can literally have sex and then go to have porn. There is a separation to some extent between porn and male sex drive. So why do guys go to porn then? Now, some of it does have to do with lust. Some of it has to do with, and, you know, I don't think that we can claim that porn isn't warping people's minds and even sexual acts. We live in a pornified society. A lot of porn terms are colloquial mainstream. People use them as jokes, right? So that's how much people watch porn, that everybody knows. No one admits that they watched that certain site, but everybody knows what's going on with it, right? So a lot of these terms have entered the mainstream because porn has become a mainstream thing. And so it's affected how we even are sexual with each other, men and women. Women have started behaving different sexually since women started watching porn themselves. So there's elements here that it's kind of corrupted the entire sexuality of people, but it is what it is. We are here at this point. I think that there's certainly a case to be made that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the creation of more gay people and certainly the transsexual movement has come from pornography. Because the way that porn works is this: porn it deals with an anxiety circuit. So you, as a man, get anxious. You're anxious about something. You're anxious about stuff in your life. You're anxious about your relationship. And so you're looking for a way to feel better. And porn is a release for that. Porn is really much more of an anxiety release. It's more of a way to get dopamine to make yourself feel better in the moment. Now, the way that the sort of lust cascade, the extra desire comes into the picture is that the way that the porn algorithms work is that they start to show you more and more extreme content to get your anxiety release. So they'll show you things that shock you. And then when those things shock you, then that creates like an anxiety surge, which then gets transmuted because you're jerking off, because you're aroused, into actually becoming turned on by this thing. So they can actually program you over a long enough time to have certain sexual fetishes. And there's a lot of, I think interesting arguments and, it was actually in the last season of White Lotus. I think this had some viral. It's like the only TV show I've watched ever. This kind of went viral talking about this, how some guy in there was becoming gay and was even thinking about becoming a woman because of the porn he had consumed, his sexual lust. He started to have like an autoeroticism. He started to think of himself as the person that he was fucking. So he started to like associate with that and want to be that. So it's like the point I'm trying to make here, I'm not trying to get into too grainy detail, but the point I'm trying to make here is that you do get programmed by porn, and a lot of the things in porn really fit the definition of lust if you want these things acted out to some extent. So like the argument that guys you can't just like feed it away there's some truth to that. It fits into a different category. A lot of it has to do with guys and their management of anxiety. Porn feeds into lust. But here's the thing. Porn feeds into lust. But why does a guy have anxiety? Why does a guy feel like he needs to feel better about himself? Maybe it has to do with other things in his life, but a major reason that guys go to porn is because they do not feel like they have an open and emotional connection with the woman that they're with. This is what Matt Forney is talking about, and it's what none of these rigid, prude, judgmental trad women get. They don't get it. They don't care. And this is what makes me kind of frustrated, is because these women, and some men too, who are trying to, in my opinion, maybe simp for them, they have no understanding of how men are wired. They don't have no understanding or real desire to like meet male sexuality. Most of these women don't have a lot of sex with their husbands. I want to show you guys another thing here, right? Let me see, is this it? Regular sex, 2 to 3 times a week. Addiction, porn on his browser even once. This is why I say it's a female misunderstanding of the male sex drive. I would have sex with my wife every single day if she wanted. We don't because she doesn't want to. That's okay. I don't use porn. I stated why in other posts, but I get why men do. You have sex on Friday and Saturday night, but now it's Tuesday and she's nearly asleep after a long day. You rub one out and go to sleep the next day. You just see her on social media crying about your porn addiction. It's just funny because that's not addiction. That's just the male sex drive and a man who doesn't want to cheat. Would it be better if he didn't use porn? Yes. Should he maybe go a few extra days without sexual release? Yes. Would the wife Having more sex cut back on his porn use? Yes. Does he have a crippling addiction like alcohol or drug use? No. That's just silly. The question here is like, what is addiction? What are we defining as an addiction? Are we defining as an addiction somebody who is unable to go days or unable to go weeks without porn, even if he's having sex every day? Like men are not having as much sex as they want in marriages. Even men who are having good sex lives from the perspective of marriages, they're not having as much sex as they would want to. I can tell you that a lot of men would enjoy having sex every day. Some guys could do it twice a day. They could do it twice a day. No problem. In their 30s. You're in your 20s, you could do it more than that. Maybe you won't want to do it over time. So when you have women who are doing like once or twice a week, it's just not a lot for a lot of guys. Now, guys can get more management over their sex drive for sure, but they're not getting as much as they want. And it's true that a lot of these guys will turn to porn just as a way to take the pressure off of their marriage. And there's not a lot of appreciation about that from these women. Here's what I imagine as the most common porn addiction scenario. Man is married and very sexually unsatisfied, looks at porn now and then. Wife catches him. He leaves a tab open or something and flips out. The man, scared and embarrassed, admits the porn addiction. Now the issue can be shifted to his recovery, going to therapy or his priest. Women can feel better because it falls under the umbrella of a disease model of addiction. No one's really at fault. If man really wants to self-flagellate, he can go online and discuss his problem. Reminds me a lot of Neil Strauss's book, The Truth, which, by the way, I know got a lot of crap. I thought the book was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good book. And Neil Strauss goes through it all. He goes through the entire model of addiction. The first part of that book, he gets diagnosed with sex addiction. He has to go to a clinic, and they do all the usual shaming tactics with him. And then he goes on a big exploration to try to get his sexual needs met, doing whatever he wants. And that doesn't work either. He ends up coming to a point where he realizes it's about being more open in the relationship. This is really where I want to go with this. I'm going to show you guys a few more posts here. I'm just trying to build this stuff up. Porn is less about the girl being hot, most are mid, and more about appearing enthusiastic. Many of these wives, as feminists, find the idea of acting like that to be degrading and offensive. So it is the husband's fault for developing an unrealistic, demonic expectation. Let's see. There's one more here I wanted to show right now. Fuck, did I not put up here? Well, okay. I don't think I added it by mistake. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. One of the things that was really notable to me, though, was how the only people who are diagnosed with sex addiction or porn addiction are like guys who are total gooners. Like they spend all day, every day jerking off in front of the computer. They can't, they're antisocial. They can't maintain eye contact. It's just they have a compulsion to keep doing it. And the other people who do it are Christian guys who looked at porn once. I'm not saying looked at porn once in their life, but look at porn like once or twice a week because they're having sex maybe once or twice a week. They get labeled it because they get judged. It's such a huge problem. It's such a huge problem because the reason that guys are going to porn on a fundamental level is because they're feeling a lack of ability to connect to their wife. Now, I think some of this has to do with specific sex acts. It has to do with her sexual enthusiasm. Men have a really filthy sex drive. I forget what the post was, but most women do not understand and are terrified by the male sex drive. I think men get terrified by the female sex drive about how, like, deep the depravity can kind of go, but men have a very filthy sex drive for most women. Like, women can have a very, very deep, deep, complicated fantasy, but men are just very vulgar. Their sexual fantasies are really vulgar, and a lot of women, especially super conservative, traditional women who have negative views of that kind of behavior, not entirely incorrectly, but the thing is they're afraid of touching it because they see it all as sinful. But the result is that they create a very unsafe space for the man to be able to express his carnal desires. She creates like the Madonna whore complex. She wants to be the Madonna. So where's the guy going to get his whore? Porn becomes the vector for the whore to come out. Porn becomes the vector for the whore to be explored because he can't explore it with his wife. And a lot of it does come down to, like, there's a lack of emotional connection. You as a woman cannot say, I want to have an emotionally connected, healthy relationship, and then say, I'm grossed out by my husband's fantasies and I don't want him to talk about it and I won't do any of that stuff. You don't understand how to connect with your man then. If you're not willing to have open conversations, if you're not willing to be sexually open-minded and your husband wants that, then you don't have this kind of relationship. And a lot of these guys, they want to connect with their wife. If they were able to share these things with their wife, if the wife created a safe environment for him to share this stuff, the marriage would go in a totally different direction. Things would get so much more exciting. There'd be much less risk of cheating, and there'd be much less porn usage. Ultimately, there would be less porn usage. They think, okay, well, I don't, you can't feed it. Don't feed it. There's truth to that when it comes maybe to certain kind of like acting out depravity stuff. But the issue is that if these are things like, what kind of sex are you having with him? Are you actually enthusiastic, or is it like a duty sex? Are you like, I would like to hear from these women. Are they really enthusiastic? They really want to be with him, connect with him. They're super eager to have sex, but they just don't want, to like have some fantasies about threesomes or whatever. Is that it? That they don't want to think about things that are really, really gross and depraved? I can maybe have some sympathy for that. But I can tell you that 99% of the time, you do not have a woman who's really enthusiastic about fucking, who is either, if that woman is really enthusiastic about fucking, then she's not going to create, even if she doesn't want to do or have certain fantasies discussed, she's not going to create an unsafe environment for that guy to share it. And also, the guy is going to feel less inclined in most cases towards any kind of fantasies and escapism if he's feeling like he has this super connected, charged relationship with his woman. But these women aren't creating this environment. I can tell by looking at them. I can tell by their behavior and orientation. They want things to be very, very vanilla and very, very tame. And they may concede frequency, but they don't concede ardor. Okay? They don't concede ardor. They don't love sex. And so if you're a guy who wants your sexual self to be seen, and you're with a woman who is too conservative and trad and frankly repressed, and I'm not trying to encourage the fantasy treadmill and all the stuff in porn. I'm just saying you got to learn to like sex. You got to learn to like fucking if you want to keep people on the right path. You want to keep your husband on the right path? Then you need to do all the stuff that your Bible says, and you need to be putting out a lot, and you got to be putting out with enthusiasm. You got to learn to like sex. You got to learn to do it. Otherwise, this porn conversation, like, and that's what I mean. Like, I don't like porn. I don't think it's healthy for guys. But man, I'll tell you what's a lot less healthy is this bullshit. Is this, he's got such an addiction because he looked at the browser. He's got to stop doing. He's a terrible person. It's a shame. Even the guys who like I love, like John Haskins, who like helps get guys get off their porn addiction. He will tell you that the shame is the thing that keeps guys in the cycle. But these women don't get that. Like, you should quit porn for yourself. You should quit it for yourself because you're wasting your energy. You're gooning to, images on a screen, and maybe there's demons harvesting some of that energy. But if you could have conversations with your wife, and if you felt you could be safe and share stuff with her, and you felt like you had an open container to do that, you wouldn't want to go to porn that much, and you certainly wouldn't want to go to the OnlyFans stuff, which is where we are going today. That's where a lot of them are going today, like as Matt Forney said. This whole thing about guys going to whores and telling them how they feel, sharing intimate moments in their life is not new. It's not new. I read romantic literature from the 19th century. I've read Dostoevsky. Notes from Underground, right? Notes from Underground. I mean, the protagonist falls in love with or I don't want to say falls in love. He has a thing for a prostitute because there was some openness there. Now it's a very like toxic and dynamic. I don't want to. It's not the only one that I've heard, and it's the one that comes to mind right now. But the point is that there is a sort of intimacy because in any girl who's in escorting, especially escorting, right? When you get into more emotionally sexually charged services, which always charge a lot more, that these women know that they have plenty of experiences with guys who are really coming to them because they're lonely. They don't think anyone cares about them. And a lot of times those guys are married. So what does that say? What does that say about the women involved? I don't think it's right that guys need to be taking all this stuff on the shoulders. I don't think it's right that this stuff, it's just like, to me, it's such a petty, pedantic lecture. I want to see trad women talking about sex, how great sex is, how much they love having sex with their husbands. And when I hear those women talking about that, then I think men might care a little bit more about the porn addiction. I think that guys are going to listen a lot more to their wives' concern about their porn addiction when the woman wants to have sex with them and the guy's spent because he looked at porn. Now you've got a real problem because he couldn't get it up for me. I really wanted to have sex with him, but he was looking at porn instead. All right. Now we're on to something here. Now we've got some fairness. Now we got some point here. But if it's that, I don't want to have sex with him a lot, but he opened a tab and he jerked off, and now what am I going to do? This is terrible. Have more sex. Ask him why he felt the need he did that. Rather than judge him off the rip, ask him why. Ask him what he was looking at. Ask him why he was looking at that. Do you actually care? Ask him why he was looking at that. You might actually start having like a breakthrough in your marriage. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to do the stuff that he was looking at, but ask him why. Get him to share it. It may be that some of it he doesn't really like, and it's become a stimulus thing for him to get off. It may be some of the stuff that he's wanted to ask her to do, but she won't share it. But the thing is that this is real intimacy. This is real intimacy. And while I do think that lust can become an addiction, it can become an addiction in a relationship. It can taint and distort the relationship. And a lot of guys can become voyeurs because of the amount of porn that they've watched. Most of the time, it's not that extreme. Most of the time, there's some degree of curiosity there, and they didn't feel like they could share it within their marriage because the woman wasn't giving them a safe environment to do it. This is great example of, and this is one of the things, if your husband has a porn issue, it's also your fault. Marriage is a team sport. He's right about that. And then Caitlin Francis says, when I say I will be grilling my daughter's future boyfriend about any porn use from day one of their relationship so that they don't end up in a marriage with a man who thinks like this. I responded, this is the kind of clueless approach where you don't only lose a son-in-law, but eventually your daughter. I don't understand what these people are thinking. First off, it's like fucking psycho behavior. It's nuts behavior. Hey, nice to meet you. Do you look at porn, by the way? Just need to know if you look at any porn. Like, first off, do you have any idea how many guys have looked at porn? Are you that fucking clueless that you don't know that 90, if not 99% of guys have looked at porn? Doesn't mean that they're using right now, but do you know that they have used it? About any porn use from day one of the like, this woman's husband's looking at porn. Bet you anything, her husband's looking at porn. And we got this one here too, right? Should read some of the data on the 2 to 6% rate of clinical sex addiction among men and how using sex stimulation compulsively as one would a drug is not resolved by intimacy. This has nothing, because I asked, how often are you having sex with your husband? To the the feminist turned housewife on her first post. This is actually like really, I don't know what he thinks this kind of own is. This is really low numbers. You have 100% of men are looking at porn, and 5% of them, less than 5%, let's say, are actually have some kind of compulsion. So that means that porn addiction is really not that crazy high. I'm going to go through some of these. I'm going to go through some of these comments here. What's wrong with women having filthy sex as long as it doesn't involve infidelity? It's a good question. It's a good question. Now, I think that the risk is that when you start to open the exploration of desire, can you get to a place where you're no longer interested in the person in front of you and you're interested in the act itself? I'm not saying here, I want this to be clear because this is a complicated topic. If you get into it in the nitty-gritty, there's a reason why there's some talking past each other, because porn, lust what it does is it objectifies the other person. And it's okay to view your woman as a sexual object, but you also have to be viewing her as a person. You have to be loving the person. If you start to get into like increasing sexual highs, seeking new sexual highs, you're on a lust treadmill, and it ultimately leads people into, open relationships and all sorts of emotional complications. So, but there's a good question that if you have certain eroticism, and fantasies which are natural and normal to people, is it better for you to submerge them, or is it better for you to be able to open up about them within a relationship? Is it wrong to have your woman enthusiastically give you a blowjob? Is that wrong? I don't really see how that is something that can destroy the marriage if you explore it. I don't know, if you start to talk about group sex fantasies, then maybe it does start to move things if you take it too seriously, if you're not mature enough. You are playing with fire, but sex is fire. So either you put the fire out and there's no fire at all, or you learn how to play with fire. In the purpose of a marriage, the purpose of passion literally is fire, right? The purpose of it is, can you keep it in a container? And can you enjoy it in that container? Can you sanctify it in that container? And I think you can sanctify it in that container. If I were to guess, the husbands are in I'm just thankful for what I can get mindset so they can both pretend they're performing well despite settling for mediocre. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this stuff, Michael, one of the reasons I love Michael Foster would never be approaching porn the way that these women approach porn. Because Michael Foster thinks sex is great. He's been married to his wife for like 20 years, and they've got like 9 children. They have sex a lot. He's very pro sex. And that's why he's probably led more people to Christ than anybody else, because he doesn't get into, he doesn't have any shame about male sexuality. Paul said that, obviously it's great if you don't have this, but if you're burning with desire, do it in a marriage. A lot of these women don't think anybody, they should be in nunneries. They should be in convents. They don't like sex enough to be married to a man. How do you lead the conversation correctly? I think you got to be honest and open about it. But are you willing to be judged and rejected? This is stuff I've talked about in other videos about when you have like an emotional gridlock and you take a relationship to the next level. It involves difficult conversations. It involves confronting fear. You should start to share what you want, start to share what you think about, start to share what you need. Is she going to reject you? She might reject you. You have to get to a point where you don't give a fuck if she rejects you. But the problem is a lot of these guys, they won't ever leave a woman who rejects them. They're not willing enough to get what they want out of a relationship, what they need to feel whole. And I think that Donna says it right. If she's unable to listen and understand his needs, she's the wrong woman. Listen to my son. As a man gets older, his sex drive moves more from the physical to mental, hence the dirty old man. I think that's definitely true. I think that's definitely true. And actually, you could argue that some of that is about the development and integration of a man. If you take it from a Jungian perspective, that it's more of the feminine emerging. Just like for women, a lot of times women can become a little bit more physically carnal. But that's a whole other topic to explore. I just wanted to tackle this, guys. It's a complicated topic. The Christians aren't wrong about what porn does to guys. They're not wrong about it, but you need to find a way to allow more sexual openness in your marriage if you have any ability whatsoever to stop guys from using it and have a healthy marriage. Otherwise, it's going to become stale. There's going to be frustration, and you can expect it to happen on the side. And the dirty secret is a lot of those women prefer to not know. They don't want it ever addressed because they don't want to face the fact that their husband wants those things, because they prefer to have the perfect little image of him. Just like a lot of men prefer to have that perfect little image of their woman, and they don't want to know what kind of dirty things that she thinks about. I have seen some very Christian women in marriages who pretend to be the goody girl, right? No problems whatsoever, have affairs and do fucking crazy stuff. So I think you got to address this stuff in the marriage, and you either release it and let it go, or you explore it. And that's the beauty of a marriage, a healthy marriage, at least. All right, guys, I got a client call, so I will see you next time.